some clients I had for 30 years, or I had them and then I had their kids. In some cases, grandkids coming along. My best friends to life are the friends that I made in veterinary school. Make sure you have that in writing and understanding before you start to work, because once you start to work, it's going to be difficult to make changes in expectations.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. Dr. Eddie Robinson graduated from vet school from Tuskegee in 1983 and just recently retired from his practice, but he continues to mentor veterinarians. He is a beloved mentor for Ready Vet Go. He is very active with his alma mater, Clemson University, and the athletic board of directors. And Dr. Eddie has experienced the evolution of our profession, which he shares in our conversation today. He also brings a unique perspective on multi-generational workplaces, which I think is really important to appreciate and understand. This was such a fun conversation, so let's get to the story of Dr. Eddie Robinson. When did you know you were interested in veterinary medicine?
Really started becoming interested in veterinary medicine when I was young. When I say young, I mean 4, 5, 6 years of age. My grandparents had a farm about 50 miles from where we lived. I lived in the city of Columbia, and they lived in a rural area and had a farm. And I just, from the time I can remember, I was amazed by farm animals. There are family stories about me sneaking into the barn and eating the food for the cattle, eating the food for the horses, this kind of stuff, just to try it out, to see what it was like. I remember one of those mixes had molasses in it for the cows, and it smelled so good. I couldn't go without trying it. So as a youngster, they were kind of careful about turning their backs on me, and if they couldn't find me, they knew I was down there in the barn doing something. So just growing up in around animals, I guess one of the big influences was having my grandfather call a veterinarian out when he had a breech. He had a cow with a breech, and watching the veterinarian deliver that calf, and that was so cool. I guess at this point I'm about 8, maybe. I want to do that. So really the interest really came from large animal, and really once I got out, pretty much most of my career I practiced strictly small animal, but the interest started with large.
Well, where was it where you started to learn more about small animal and get an interest there?
Well, it came later on when I looked at the economy. I looked at what it was going to be like to be a large animal veterinarian versus being a small animal veterinarian. And the fact at the time that when I was in undergraduate school, I was about 5'9" and weighed about 130 pounds. It was going to be difficult for me to be a large animal veterinarian. And I learned that more so that when the first practice I worked in was a mixed animal practice, and pulling those calves and a lot of things that seemed like fun were fun, but God, it was physically demanding. So later on, I guess by the time I got high school, undergraduate school, I started volunteering with veterinarians and really working the small animal side, because that's really where you're going to make your money, at that time. When I worked at that mixed animal practice, veterinarian who I worked for was making a transition from a large animal practice to a mixed animal practice. And in our practice, we traveled 5 counties. And so we're out on the road. You get out on the road at 8:00 in the morning, you may not get back to the office till 8, 9:00 at night. And that's a heck of a way to make a living, a heck of a way. So we developed the small animal side, and large animal was fun for a while. It was fun until it wasn't fun anymore. And one morning, it was something like 3 degrees, and 6 a.m., I'm lying on this concrete floor in this dairy delivering a calf. And at that point, I decided, you know what? You really don't want to do this. It'd be much better to be inside, and it's been fun. It's what you wanted to do. Now let's move on to the next chapter. So I started seeking positions in small animal medicine.
And it kind of occurred to me talking to somebody else not too long ago that really when we reflect back, there's been a lot of evolution when it comes to small animal
Yeah.
medicine and how pets are
Yeah.
seen and all of that. So it sounds like at that time you're already seeing a business opportunity when it comes to pets. They're no longer just the, well, we treat cats and dogs because they're on the farm,
Yeah.
to no, these are priority animals that we can really make a good living. So how were you starting to hear and see that evolution of small animal medicine, that this was actually a good life decision because of quality of life, but also business
Right.
wise?
I worked through that transition actually. When I first started practicing, because we talked about it was a mixed animal practice, you basically took care of the dogs and cats and everything as you went to the farm. You went to the farm, take care of large animals. Hey, doc, while you're here, can you give my dog a rabies shot? This type thing. He's been limping, this type thing. And then as we developed the small animal practice, it became more lucrative. And the veterinarian I was working for was in his 50s, so he couldn't get out as much. And we could see at the end of the day, small animal was bringing in a lot more money than large animal with a lot less effort, you know. And I saw that transition over my career. I graduated vet school in 1983 and was licensed in 1983 and practiced up until January of 2024. So during that time, I saw animals going from being strictly outside animals to a phase where they were, now they're spending some time inside, and then they're spending more and more time inside. And now not only they're spending inside, they're in the room, the bedrooms with the owners, and now they're in the bed with the owners. I had a client decide, her dog decided which house she was going to buy. She had narrowed it down to 3, and he was going to decide which of those 3 houses that she was going to buy based upon how he responded. And I remember saying to her, I said, hey, the only way my dog would have some input as to what house I was going to buy, we would have to turn it around, and I would want to know how much he's going to put in, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I saw that transition go, and I saw also where with pets, a lot of times it was discretionary income that was used to take care of pets. I saw, in the latter parts of my career, I see now that pets are no longer discretionary income. They are family members. And in some cases, particularly if the owners don't have children, those pets are primary when it comes. The owners sometimes will go without such that their pets are taken care of. So I've seen that whole transition. It's been interesting.
Yeah. Also looking back on your part of it, being a veterinarian and watching this transition, how, reflecting back, can you think about how you
Yeah.
practiced and your interaction with pet owners, your interaction with the pets? How have you kind of seen that change
That
over
that
time as well?
definitely evolved over time, particularly the last 10 years or so. Clients have become more knowledgeable. They ask more questions. They aren't as trusting as to what you say. They're gonna look for second opinions, or they're gonna go to Dr. Google and look it up. They're gonna walk in and they've already been to Dr. Google, and they have an idea of what, or misinformation of what the problem is. And so as a result, one of the things that I found in my career is the longer I was in practice, the more time I spent with clients. Okay. The more important it became to educate clients, because clients were more educated. Those pets weren't just pets, they were pet babies, pet children. So the way we practice medicine, I think that just like in human medicine, the standards of care evolved over time. And so the way I was practicing veterinary medicine when I retired in 2024 was totally different than the way I was practicing in 2020 or 2015 or 2010 or when I started in 1983. We can do so much more for those senior animals. We're seeing those animals are living longer, just like we see in humans. The human lifespan is better, but the quality of life, that's primarily what we're focusing on. What we were focusing on is, yeah, they're living longer, but what are we doing to improve that quality of life? And clients want to have their pets as long as they can. And they not only, for the most part, not only they want just to have those pets, but they want those pets to have good quality life. And it's interesting as you develop relationships, some clients I had for 30 years, or I had them and then I had their kids, in some cases, grandkids coming along, So you learn the client, different clients have different levels of care that they want. So you can't be all to everyone. But for me in our practice, the most important thing was to have an individual plan for each animal. And that comes about from knowing the animal and knowing the client. So one of the things that I'm kind of disappointed with in veterinary medicine is, to me now, there seems to be more of one model fits all. And we're not developing individual plans for individual animals because we don't know the clients as well. We're spending that 15, 20 minutes in the room with them. And in some cases, the veterinarian may not be in there 15, 20 minutes. Veterinarian may be in there 5 minutes. You just don't get to know the patients and you don't get to know the clients. And I think that's one of the big things that, as a professional, and particularly since COVID shifted so much. And I think the demands from our clients shifted so much because during COVID, so many weren't working, they were home with their pets, and you develop that you have that bond anyway, even if you spend only 2 hours a day or an hour a day with your pet. But when you're there all day working and they're sitting beside you or in your lap or whatever, there's a bond. You can see when that animal is just, something's not quite right. Whereas before you may have missed it. So that was kind of a long answer to your short question, but yeah, over time, things have changed. Standards of medicine have changed. Clients' expectations have changed. We can do a lot more now than we could even 10 years ago. But the clients have to realize we can do more, but God, it's going to cost more. It's going to cost more.
Yeah. That's a whole nother, I think, evolution evolution might be an okay word right now, in our current events, is we have this emotional level, but now we have an economic
Yes.
challenge
Yeah.
where, yeah, we can do a lot. Do we need to? Should we? Like, those are all new conversations that we have to have. And I think, your comment about, is the vet there for 5 minutes? Well, it made me think of the dentist, right? When you go to the dentist, you may see the
Yeah.
dentist for 5
Yeah.
minutes, unless something's really bad and you don't want to see the dentist then more. But I don't think that model works for veterinary medicine, at least not now for sure,
Right.
because we don't have as much of an emotional attachment to our teeth, I guess, as our pets. So it's a whole another opportunity to understand our client, just like in a business, right?
Right.
You're understanding your
Right.
customer
Right.
and how to best serve them. So I kind of want to go back just a little bit in your career. I'm curious about the early time. So you were at Clemson for your undergrad, which I know football is a big deal for you. And for those who do not know, because I happen to live very close to South Carolina, Clemson is a big deal. Like you have very strong fans. So I wanted to ask, because you were talking about being 5'9" and 130 pounds. Did you play football at that
No,
time?
no, no, no.
Oh, okay.
I always tell my friends, we talk about my time at Clemson, and now, since I know there are a lot of people, well, quite frankly, I went to Clemson in 75, and the vast majority of African Americans at Clemson were athletes. Okay. that's the way it worked out. It was, you had student population of about 10,000, about 140 of those were African Americans, and out of that 140, probably about 100 were athletes. So
Oh, wow.
everybody seeing me on campus would go, "You must be a kicker or something, because you're all small. Could you be a defensive back? And or you must play soccer." I was like, "No, fortunately, they don't have to depend on me for my athletic ability because I couldn't even play there." Yeah. But, yeah, I played on Tiger Band for a year, and I really enjoyed Tiger Band, but it took a lot of time, and I was primarily focused on, I need to get to veterinary school. I want to get to veterinary school. I missed out a lot on the social things because I had to work so hard to get the grades I needed to get to veterinary school, and I love Clemson University. Go Tigers. But, wasn't as involved, actually been more involved in extracurricular stuff and football and basketball and baseball and all that stuff now since I've been out than I was when I was there.
Yeah. Well, all the hard work paid
Yes.
off and you went to Tuskegee.
Right.
What do you remember from vet school?
Wow. Vet school. Probably the one of the most challenging periods in my life, but yet one of the most rewarding periods of my life. One of the things compared to undergraduates, I think I made better grades in veterinary school than I did any time since elementary school. One of the reasons was I could see the relevance of everything that I was doing. Every course, my goal was to be a veterinarian. It wasn't to be a mathematician. When I was in undergrad and I'm taking calculus, I'm going, the heck does that got to do with veterinary medicine? Or I'm taking physics and I go, how I don't really see how that applies to veterinary medicine. When I got to vet school, I could see everything that I took, how that was going to apply to my future. The other thing was being in professional school, I learned the importance of working together as a team. In undergraduate school, it was like everyone was for
Mhm.
themselves because you're trying to get the best grades you can to get to where you want to go. In veterinary school, it was more uplifting everybody, a group, your study group. My best friends to life are the friends that I made in veterinary school to this point in life. I mean, that's been 40 years ago. And there are people I still regularly stay in contact with. When you're in high school, you thought, hey, those are going to be my friends forever. We're always going to be. So you go on to college and you kind of forget about them. But then college, hey, these are going to be my best friends. No, at veterinary school, the way I compare it to some of my friends and I talk about, it's kind of like being in service academy or something like that, or being in the service, the Marines. You go through that, you have those experiences, you have that common bond, you get through it and you go, wow, this person helped me with that. I can understand this. I traded off these cases, this type of thing. So I think veterinary school it was hard work, but it was rewarding. The best stories of my life probably happened in veterinary school because you were young enough and naive enough not to have to worry about all the other stuff. It was just about taking care of the business you need to take care of, to learn, to get out of there, pass the boards, and do what you wanted to do.
You opened that up. You said some of the best stories come from vet school. Is there a story you remember?
Well, I'm trying to think of things that might be at best R-rated. Okay, there are a lot of all the veterinary school. No, there are times that, and I'm trying to think. Well, one of my favorites was in large animal medicine, and like I said, I made that shift once I got to veterinary school where I started doing small animals basically only. So when we got to clinics, there were some people who liked large animal and that's what they were going to do. Some people were small animal. I was a small animal person. So I would trade off my large animal cases as best I could with large animal people. So they took care of me in large animal clinic and I helped them in small animal clinic. Well, in one particular case, we had two of us in my same class, one of my best friend, in vet school and best friend to this day. He was the best man at my wife and I's wedding. He's my son's godfather, just a fantastic guy. Well, he went on to get a PhD in pathology from Michigan State after we graduated from veterinary school. Then he did a postdoc at Harvard. So he was a pathologist. So he wasn't really in the large animal either, you know. Here I am in the large animal. And I don't remember which one of us, I think we're on the case together. It's just a large draft horse that we had, this huge horse. And somehow or the other, we let that thing get out of the stable. And this horse is just running through large animal clinic, just running free. And we're like, hey, you need to catch it. No. You let him out. You need to catch him. And we're like, somebody needs to catch him before the clinicians get back here and they find out that he's on the loose. And there was one door open that if he had gotten out of that, he was gone. It was going to be big pain for all involved. And just as he headed towards that door, one of the large animal people just happened to be walking down the corridor and just said whatever they need to say to get him to stop, and it's probably saved both of our careers. So that's probably the most G-rated one that I could tell. But you know, we grew a lot. We had a lot of fun. Veterinary school was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yes. I have a lot of fond memories of large animal rotations as well, even though I was more of a small animal tracking person as well. And thank goodness that the large animal clinicians, for the most part, not I can't say that for equine, but food animal, they were a little more laid back and understanding.
That's the way it was.
Horses, though,
That's the way it
don't
was
mess
in
with the horse.
Tuskegee. Yeah, those equine doctors were they were quite demanding.
Yeah, a little intense sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that, you know, thinking about it, some of the equine clients are also intense. So
Exactly. You see, that's
to
the
give
thing
them
I
some
found out
credit.
about. I discovered about equine. I think if you go into equine medicine, it's not something you learn in veterinary school. You have been raised that way. You have been around horses all your life. And in that particular case with this big draft horse, that classmate of ours, she was probably 5'2" and maybe 100 pounds. You know, she just in front of the horse and it just stopped. She had been raised around horses and learned how to handle them. And we were trying to learn that, you know, in 3 years. And it might not happen.
It is a special language, I think. Yeah. Well, you knew you wanted to do small animal at this point. Were you thinking ownership? Like what did you think about getting out and practicing?
From the time I decided I wanted to be a veterinarian, ownership was my target. And we talked about what attracted me to veterinary medicine. Absolutely. The number one thing was I wanted to do something where I could be my own boss. Because I said I didn't play sports in college, but I played sports in high school and throughout. And I knew my personality is that I'm a team player as long as I'm the captain of the team. I'm not just a good soldier, okay? I got to be highly ranked. And my father told me when I was 10 years old, one day we had this discussion about how the grass should be cut. And he said, son, you need to find a profession where you're going to be your own boss because you're just not geared to take instructions from other people. So that was from day one, I was looking for a career where I could be my own boss. So yeah, from day one, it was focused towards developing skills that I needed to open my own practice. And I had worked for other people for 9 years. I worked in 4 different situations before I felt that, okay, now I'm ready to jump out here and do it on my own. And the only regret I have about that is I didn't do it sooner. I didn't do it sooner. I got comfortable being an associate, having less responsibility, My wife was working, I was working, we were doing okay as a working couple. And then this little kid came along, Randall Robinson, my son. And I said, "Hey, man, you need to get back on track because you want to provide more for him." My thing for him is I wanted him to be able to go to any college that he wanted to. So for me to do that, to put aside that kind of money, to live the kind of lifestyle we wanted to live, I needed to go into ownership. And that was what we did. When I say we, I'm talking about the family. Because we all, my wife sacrificed a lot, particularly when I was starting to practice. When we even got pictures of when we bought the building and we're remodeling the building and everything. We got Randall, he's 3 years old. He's standing in chair trying to hang pictures and stuff like that. So it was great. Great time. I even have a picture of him in a cage. Don't tell my wife. He knows. But yeah, that
Well,
was the focus, was to get in the business. And I learned through the course Hard Knocks about practice management. I mean, when I was in veterinary school, I think we had one class. When I say one class, there was like a 2-hour period where we talked about practice management. But I had the advantage of working in situations under veterinarians and kind of hanging close and watching everything and watching how they did things. And sometimes I learned more of what not to do than what to do. So, it was always just trying to take what everybody else had, figure out how I was going to do it, and go do it.
yeah. One, I think that's a good point to call out that especially when you are an owner of a business, that it really is a family affair. It does encompass a lot of people. And so I think it's kind of neat to be able to see your son
Yeah.
grow up in your
Yeah.
practice and he being able to see what you do and appreciate all of the work. But when you were finally a little more focused about, okay, now I want to run my own practice, what did you observe from the leaders that you had watched? And then when you were first initiating your practice, what were your values and goals that you wanted to do when it came to, okay, now you make the rules. How did you want to build a
Well,
practice?
the first thing I learned from the first guy I worked for was he was a caring individual. He cared about his patients. He cared about his clients. And in many cases, that superseded income. He was a high volume, low average client transaction kind of doctor. Okay. And he was doing well. He did very well. He could have been doing a whole lot more if it had been about the dollar for him, but it wasn't. And he really enjoyed the people, and the people really appreciated him for what he did. And that's what I learned. I learned that I wanted to practice like that. A couple other practices I worked in during that journey where economically they did better, but they weren't as well respected by their clients, and they didn't treat the animals as well. So I learned that in my focus was going to be clients and pets first. Also, I learned how to treat your employees, that develop the team concept, of course, from playing sports and everything. Some people refer to it as family. I never refer to our group as family because most families are dysfunctional somewhere or the other. Okay. I'd rather have a team. So we always looked at it as a team concept. Nobody has to do everything. Those areas where I'm weak in, then I've got staff members who are strong in those areas. And so it was just taking care of your people, taking care of your clients and their pets first, and then taking care of your staff. And I was fortunate that my staff, when I retired, I had a top vet tech, chief vet tech who had been with me for like 22 years. I had my associate veterinarian. One of my associate veterinarians had been with me through as a kennel person in high school, through undergraduate school, through veterinary school, came back to work for me as an associate. So we had people who stayed long term because I thought we had a very good culture. And then if there was anything left, then I took care of myself and my family. Okay. So I don't mean just monetarily left. I mean physically and mentally left. Because if you're doing all those things, a lot of times there's not much left for you. And that's one of the things I've seen shifted with younger veterinarians, that total perception of a full life, having, not working the hours that us old timers worked. And I tried to do that later on in my career after my son got a little bit older. As he grew, I didn't miss any baseball practices, any games, didn't miss any concerts. Then I had built the practice good enough such that I could be away some. And he always, Wednesday afternoons, I was closed, and he knew Wednesday afternoons were his afternoons. I'd pick him up from a daycare from the time he was 3. I'd pick him up from daycare, and we'd go do what he wanted to do. Sometimes it wasn't what I wanted to do. I can remember movies where he was shaking me at the end and say, "Dad, you can wake up now." But he knew Wednesday afternoons was his afternoon, and we were going to do whatever he wanted to do. And as he got more mature, fortunately, those things became more interesting to me rather than going to Chuck E. Cheese and watching that show over and over and over and over again. We do more things. And so that became important to me. And we did that up until the time he got to junior high school. Wednesday afternoons, I pull him out of school and we just go do whatever he wanted to do. So it was trying to develop that culture. One of the things I'm most proud about, probably the thing I'm most proud about in my practice is the culture that we had. Clients and patients first, from my standpoint, then staff, and then me. Leaders eat last. That's what I believe, really. In watching other situations I had been in and watching with colleagues, when the practice was veterinarian centric, there was a lot of turnover, a lot of headaches. People didn't trust veterinarian. And we probably, bottom line, could have made more money, but I doubt if we would have had as much fun. I know we wouldn't have had as much fun. We enjoyed our clients. We enjoyed their pets, our patients. And I've got employees that left. And for the most part, employees who left our practice left to go on to better situations, to go on. Students that worked, and now they're going to nursing school or ultrasonography school, or they're going on to vet school or whatever. So there was some turnover at the bottom at kennel assistant position, a lot of turnover there, what everybody has. But those main cogs, your technicians, your associates, your receptionists, your office managers, those people were long term because I thought we had a really good culture of hey, at the end of the day, what's the most important thing? Our clients and our patients. And now I'm going to take care of you. I'm not going to take advantage of you. This is something I understand what you're doing. You have a family. You're trying to raise a family. You're trying to meet costs just like I am. Let's grow together.
Yeah, I love that, and I remember us talking about that too, that analogy between sports teams and how important that is to have such a cohesive team when it comes to a veterinary clinic as well. So you are doing a lot of mentorship right now with
Yes.
Ready Vet
Ready,
Go
vet,
and
go.
and probably some others too. What's one thing that seems to keep coming up that you think that early career vets and maybe new grads really benefit from when you're giving pieces of advice?
I think particularly with Ready Vet Go, any mentorship situation, but particularly with Ready Vet Go, when we come together in our packs, it's that communication to know that you're not the only one going through this. A lot of times, particularly when I came along, there wasn't as much social media. There wasn't any social media or anything like that. I was fortunate enough to have a friend that was a classmate who started a practice before I did. and then a friend that was 2 years ahead of me in vet school that I could call and talk to and say, "How do you feel about this? What do you think about this? Should I do this?" And again, sometimes they were able to tell me what to do, some more times what not to do. Okay. So what I see coming up is when we come together in those packs to know that, hey, whatever you're going through, you're not alone. Most of the young veterinarians coming out are going through the same thing. Is it lack of confidence? Do you think that maybe you're not as good as people think you are? To get that confidence and to say, I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm not stupid because somebody in my pack did the exact same thing. You know, the struggle between generations, generational differences is huge because a lot of the practice owners or baby boomers or whatever, and the work ethic, I shouldn't say the work ethic, but work expectations are different now than they were. What you have to remember, if you're a younger practicing veterinarian, when the old guys like me came along, there was no social life. There was veterinary medicine. People were calling you in the middle of the night, all that stuff. There were many cases no emergency clinics, or you felt if there were emergency clinics that you wanted to take those cases anyway. So there was no long weekends. There were no getaways. So the expectations from the older veterinarians, in many cases the owner or the senior veterinarian, versus a veterinarian just coming out of veterinary school. Heck, you've been grinding undergrad school, you've been grinding veterinary school. Now you finally reach that point, want to relax a little bit, but no, there's no relaxing. You know, you got to go, 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 go. So really just the fellowship of knowing that, hey, I'm not going through this alone, and to be able to get together and talk in a circle about things that you did. And then you go, hey, I'm not so dumb after all. They're having the same problems. And then being able to work within that work environment with generational differences. Those are the two things primarily that I see. And I really like when we go the 6 month period when we go with the veterinarians, just watching them grow and watching their confidence level go up as they grow and they have successful cases and things of that nature. And, and they don't feel that imposter syndrome so much. That's really rewarding. It really is. It's from day one, watching them that first pack meeting when nobody wants to talk up, nobody wants to talk about any mistakes they may have made or any questions they may have until we get 4 months, 5 months down the line. The sessions run out of time, and we have all these great cases, and it's usually not so much medical cases because pretty much you're equipped for that. You just have to learn to trust in yourself. But it's all the other stuff, the time management things, the management of relationships, both inside and outside of the clinic. So much of that stuff is just that you don't learn in school. It's real life, the school of hard knocks. So those are the type of things that I see.
Yeah. On the generational differences, I think this is a big topic. What is something that you can do as a younger veterinarian coming in and you love veterinary medicine just as much, but you want life to look a little bit different than an older generation? Like you said, though, they often are running the clinic, they're often the senior veterinarian. How do you communicate that? How do you make that work?
I think the key thing is, and particularly now it's more important with you guys, you young veterinarians, since there is the need for veterinarians exceed the supply, is from day one when you go in to interview for a job. I think you guys realize you're not just interviewing for a job, you're interviewing the clinic to see if you want to work there. Okay. And the thing is to have those expectations very upfront. And that's what I see more and more veterinarians are doing now. The young crew, you guys are saying up front, hey, am I going to have to take emergency calls? How many weekends a month am I going to be off? What's the work schedule like? Make sure you have that in writing and understanding before you start to work. Because once you start to work, it's going to be difficult to make changes in expectations. If they expect that Megan's going to come in, she's going to work at my clinic, this is going to be her schedule. She's only going to work 5 days a week, or she's only going to work 4.5 days a week, or whatever. You understand that was different than Megan's going to come to work for Eddie. Okay. Eddie worked 6.5 days a week. Okay. So I'm used to that. That's what I expect from Megan. But Megan, if she's going to work for me, she's not going to do that. And I understand that going in. And Megan understands going in that Eddie is from a different generation. He's going to look at me cross-eyed when I leave the clinic at 5 o'clock, where he's still staying till it's 8 or 9. Okay. So it's just having those expectations and addressing those up front before you sign that contract, and looking for the best situations. I don't think we ever going to find that perfect situation unless you're the boss.
Right.
The perfect situation if you're the boss. But if you're going in as an associate, that first job is so, maybe you don't find the perfect situation, but you find a situation where you can live in, that you can grow in. And that first job, and I, so many times with Ready Vet Go and some of the other mentoring I do, it's people that take that first job for one reason or the other, and then they discover the reason they took that job really wasn't for their best interest. And I would make a list. What are the deal breakers? And they'd take a deal breaker thinking that they're going to change Eddie, or they're going to change the culture of Eddie's practice in 3 months, because they're going to come in with all these new techniques and all these new diagnostics, and it's going to change. No, it's not. It's not going to change unless you're going into an environment where there is a thirst for knowledge and the willingness to change. And remember about us old guys, we've done things a certain way for a long time, and it's worked. So why should I change to something new and different that may work or may not when I know this works for me? So having those expectations, interviewing, talking to the associate veterinarians there, finding out what the situation, don't forget, if you can, talk to technicians. Those are your keys. Technicians, I always tell in mentoring, I tell young veterinarians, find a seasoned tech and attach yourself to him or her, because that tech's going to save your butt so many times. There's some delineation between a technician and a veterinarian. You have to keep with those. So you're not necessarily that technician that won't necessarily have to be your best friend, but they may be your best work friend. Particularly early on, you find that seasoned tech who knows the owner, who knows the other associate veterinarians, who knows the clients, gonna save you so much, gonna save your butt from drowning so many times. Develop that relationship.
Oh, I love that. Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I think I could keep asking you so many questions, but for the sake of time, I love asking this as our final question, and that is, it's around gratitude. So this can be anything, but when I say, what are you most grateful for? What comes to your mind?
The people I worked with,
Mm.
without a doubt, the people I worked with through the 40 years of practice, not the clients, not the patients, even though I said the practice was, centered on those. When people ask me, what do I miss most about retirement? It's the people I worked with, going every day, that team, our family, that team that we work together every day, and then seeing that team go on to bigger things, or seeing they've gotten married now and now they have kids, and watching the kids growing up, and those relationships that I had with my team.
Mm.
It feels good. It feels good to be respected by that team. Even now, I'm an old guy and I'm out the door, but they're still calling me and checking on me. And, people who worked for me 15 years ago, sending me happy birthday notes or going to lunch with people that worked and now they've gone on to veterinary schools, or they've gone on to medical school now and they're finished residencies and stuff, and they still think about this old guy.